They're young, poor, and alone in a foreign country.
Hi, sorry to trouble you.
Girls as young as 15 are being sent from villages in Myanmar to the high rises of Singapore to work illegally as domestic helpers. I'm Steve Chow. On this episode, 101 East meets the underage girls who say they were abused inside Singaporean homes.
She's a child in a strange country, desperate to find her way home. The social workers taking care of her have asked that we hide her identity, so we're calling her Tet Tet. A month ago, Tet Tet left Myanmar and boarded a plane bound for Singapore. An agent had promised her a job as a domestic worker. But it was illegal to hire Tet Tet. Under Singaporean law, all foreign domestic workers must be at least 23 years old. Tet Tet is just 15. To keep up the charade, her Myanmar agent got her a passport with a fake birth date. February the 5th, 1992. It sounds like an implausible plan. Surely someone would uncover the truth. But even doctors conducting her medical checkup in Singapore didn't seem to notice how young she was. She had become a child worker in one of Asia's richest cities. Tet Tet's disturbing story might never have surfaced had she not run away after realizing she couldn't cope with the job. But what's truly shocking is that her story is not unique.
Last year we saw at least 10 Burmese domestic workers who were underage, and just this month alone we encountered 6.
According to official statistics, there are more than 230,000 foreign domestic workers in Singapore. Traditionally, they've come from the Philippines and Indonesia. But NGOs say they've been seeing more and more women from Myanmar in recent years.
Agencies are bringing them in larger numbers. Because you can pay Burmese domestic workers less, so it's about cost.
The rise in the number of workers comes despite a supposed clampdown. In September 2014, the Myanmar government banned its citizens from seeking domestic work overseas, following several reports of abuse. But that has done little to stem the tide.
The agency find ways to bribe the authorities so that their workers can leave Myanmar, even though there's a ban.
Next station, Orchard.
Girls are still leaving Myanmar, only now they are doing so illegally, making them vulnerable to exploitation. Norsa Gaysay was just 17 when she came to Singapore. Gaysay hoped to earn enough money to support her family and send her younger siblings to school. But 3 months after starting work in Singapore, she called a government helpline. She said her employer was abusing her. Gaysay is now 19. This shelter has been her home for nearly a year. but the shelter will have to do for now. She has to stay here as long as police investigations are still underway. Five months after meeting Gaysay, we finally see her smile.
I am pure and very happy.
She's going home at last. Her case has finally been resolved. A court recently sentenced her employer to 6 weeks in prison for assaulting her. This is where Gaysay used to live and where she was so badly treated. Towner Estate, one of many public housing estates in Singapore. Life for her inside one of these flats was isolating and bewildering. She says she was only allowed outside when she walked her employer's children to and from the local school. While Gaysay plans her journey home, back at the shelter, another young woman from Myanmar is left living in limbo. Momo was also just 17 when she arrived in Singapore. She's been at the shelter for more than 2 years after running away from an employer she says sexually abused her. She's agreed to speak to us if we hide her identity. Momo says she finally ran away after her employer raped her, risking her life by climbing out of the window of his 7th floor apartment. We ask why she didn't leave earlier. Being in debt creates a dilemma that many of the women at the shelter know too well. Often, the first 6 to 10 months of their salaries go towards paying their agents for arranging their flight, visa, accommodation and employment.
It leads to situations of forced labor. The women feel compelled to continue working for the employer because they haven't paid up their debt. And the debt also compels them to work under very exploitative and abusive conditions because if they are unable to pay it off, they're afraid that they might be harassed or their families might be harassed in their countries of origin.
The abuse that Gaysay suffered at the hands of her employer will be hard to forget. But at least she's going home. Myanmar is a 3-hour plane ride from Singapore. Gaysay's older sister spent the night at a bus station so that she could get to the airport in time. They've not seen each other for more than a year. It's monsoon season in Myanmar and it's a slow journey home. 3 hours drive from Yangon, in what looks like the middle of nowhere, someone very special is waiting for them. The road to their village is too muddy for cars to pass. So Gaysay's father has come with a bullock cart to take his daughters home.
hear my mother. They see my mother. You see my mother very cute, right?
You miss her?
Yeah.
I don't know. Don't let our mamma use me without the media or good change. I am at the loom, chicken at it. Same as Handago. Near a little safety car at it to me, Yamachin.
Life is hard here. Gaysay's family are rice farmers who make around $1,200 a year. So when an agent told her about a job that would pay her at least $350 a month, she jumped at the opportunity. She's now decided it's better to be a farmer.
Better than working in Singapore.
Yeah.
But not everyone regrets their decision to leave the village. Gaysay's neighbor has also just returned from Singapore. She says her employers treated her well. She was lucky, but she was also illegal. When we asked to see her passport and identity card, the birth dates don't match. There are women who never make it home. While we're in Gaysay's village, a terrible story breaks in Singapore. A domestic worker from Myanmar is dead, and her employers, a mother and daughter, charged with her murder. Piang Nai Don had been with the family for more than a year before her untimely death. According to media reports, Piang was found with bruises on her body, indicating that she had been abused. We decide to pay Piang's family a visit. But they live in an area even more remote than Gaysay's village. To get there, we must first return to Yangon, then take a plane to the city of Calais in northwest Myanmar. Next, we get into a four-wheel drive and head into neighboring Chin State, one of the poorest regions in the country. It's a slow, bumpy ride over 50 miles of rough, mountainous terrain. Landslides are a regular occurrence here, and the journey takes 10 hours. As we near the village, we switch to motorbikes for the last part of the journey. The road here is so bad, even our four-wheel drive can't get through. Piang was a single mother and had left her son in her sister's care when she went to work in Singapore. Now that she's gone, Piang's little boy will only know his mother through these photos. The family says she rarely called home and never complained about her job. They only suspected something was wrong when they spoke to her just 2 weeks before her death. It was the last time they spoke. Outside the house, Piang's siblings have prepared a cross for her. They want her to be buried next to their parents. But something doesn't match. It says here that she was born on the 13th of June 1992. Official documents produced by Piang's sister confirm that this is correct. But it appears her agent had changed the birth date on her passport to 2 months earlier, the 13th of April 1992. So when Piang arrived in Singapore, she was actually under 23, the legal minimum age for domestic workers there. Had corrupt officials in Myanmar not provided her with false paperwork, had Singaporean authorities discovered the truth, she might still be alive today. It's beautiful in Dimpi, but the scenery can't mask the poverty that's evident everywhere in this village. Young women desperate for a better life are easy targets for unscrupulous agents. A year ago, Pao and Man were told they too could get jobs in Singapore. The teenagers speak only a Chin dialect and know very little of the world outside the village. But a recruitment agent told them they had nothing to worry about. They were taken to a boarding house in Yangon. There, 16-year-old Pao had a change of heart after overhearing a telephone conversation between a roommate and her worried parents. She fled the boarding house in the early hours one morning with another girl from her village, leaving Man behind. The streets of Yangon must have seemed a bewildering place for two teenagers from a faraway village. When a taxi driver offered them a free ride, they got into his car. But then, she says, he tried to molest them. She's reluctant to say much more about the ordeal. What we do know is that the girls managed to fend him off. Luckily, the next stranger they met got them the help they needed. Zam Zar Thon lives in Yangon, but he's originally from Dimpi, the girls' home village. When he met them, they told him their friend Man was still at the boarding house, in danger of being sent to Singapore. He decided to launch a rescue mission. The recruitment agent's boarding house is on the 7th floor of this building. Zam arrived accompanied by some police officers. He demanded that Man be released. It proved their connection to the runaway girls. They could no longer deny involvement. And keeping up the pressure, Zam was able to rescue the teen who had been left behind. There are recruitment agents who say they are trying to clean up the industry. At this training center in Yangon, the policy is to only recruit women who are at least 23 years old. It Mary was once a domestic worker herself. She says she had a hard time when she first got to Singapore.
ဘာသာစကားနားမလည်တဲ့ပြဿနာနဲ့ဒီတန်ရှင်းရေးအပိုင်းချက်လက်ပြုတ်တဲ့အပိုင်းတွေမှာပေါ့မကြည်ညက်တာ training ကောင်းကောင်းမပေးတဲ့အပိုင်းတွေမှာပြဿနာတော့တွေ့တယ်အဲ့ဒါတော့တွေ့ရတယ်
Despite claiming that her trainees are of legal age, her business isn't totally above board, and Mary still wants her identity hidden. Beyond the training, she must also find ways for these women to get out of Myanmar. She says immigration officials have to be bribed to turn a blind eye.
အလဲဗီဇာအရင်အစစ်တော့မဟုတ်ဘူးထင်တယ်သမီးသိရောเนาะအဲ့အလဲဗီဇာအရင်လုပ်တယ်ဒီဘက်မှာအလဲဗီဇာပြတယ်တစ်လဆိုရင်ပေါ့တစ်လနေပြန်လာမယ်ဘယ်နည်းတော့ဘယ်နည်းအဲ့လိုမျိုးနေပြတယ်ပြပြီးဒီဘက်ကိုဖြတ်တယ်ဟိုဘက်ကြတော့စင်ကာပူကပေးတဲ့ work permit IPA bond letter ဟိုဘက်မှာကြတော့အဲ့ bond letter အဲ့လိုမျိုးပြပြီးထွက်တယ်စာရွက်နှစ်ခုနဲ့အဲ့လိုမျိုးထွက်ကြတယ်
Mary says she won't exploit underage girls. But plenty of other recruitment agents have been doing just that, and we're about to meet one. A source has given us her address, and we've decided to pay her a visit.
Hi, sorry to trouble you. It's okay. Auntie sent us a photo.
Yes.
Our cover story is that we're a Singaporean couple trying to track down their aunt's former domestic worker.
This is the employment pass photo.
Through the door, row after row of young women can be seen sitting on the floor. The agent asks one of them to look at our photo. She seems awfully young, no more than a teenager.
She's from Singapore?
No, she's not ex-Singapore.
Oh.
She's the first time.
She's not the only new recruit. We learn that everyone sitting here has only recently arrived. Many of them look like they're still in their teens.
Do you also send girls to Singapore as well?
Yes.
You do?
We do.
And then she helpfully tells us the name of her Singaporean partner.
We have an agency. We contact SLF in Singapore.
What?
You can find their SLF agency.
We're back in Singapore and we've found SLF agency.
Yeah. Thank you.
This time, we pose as potential employers looking to hire a domestic worker from Myanmar.
You can try the fresh one because fresh one is very brilliant.
We're introduced to this young woman.
How old are you?
I am 20 years old.
Her answer should have raised alarm bells, but the agents don't seem perturbed. Instead, they try hard to close the deal.
Because it's very fast, can go there. How if you confirm maybe 4 working days, 3 to 4 working days can go there.
The laws of both Myanmar and Singapore were written to protect girls like this one from exploitation. But no one, not even the governments who wrote the rules, seems to be taking any notice of them. When we wrote to Singapore's Ministry of Manpower, they sent us a single paragraph citing a survey showing that 97% of foreign domestic workers were satisfied working in Singapore. Our queries about government policies, corruption in Myanmar, and the abuse of women and even girls were all ignored. The Myanmar government didn't even respond to our request for comment.
It's an issue which both source and destination countries have to have the political will to do something about. It's not a problem that lies only with the Burmese government or the Singapore government. So there has to be a lot more bilateral cooperation to ensure that this kind of exploitation by recruitment agents don't happen.
For young women with few options in their home country, employment as domestic workers in Singapore can be a way out of poverty. But unless flaws in the system are fixed, there's always the risk that their dreams of a better life could turn into a nightmare.